Namaste. Welcome to Yourself Yoga for Menopause. My name's Julianne Garrido, and today I have a very, very special guest, Dr. Louise Oliver. And Louise is actually a GP or general practitioner of medicine, and also a functional breathing practitioner and a therapeutic life coach. Now, Louise is here today to talk to us about breathing, how breathing can affect menopause, and I'm going to pin her down on some specific symptoms. More importantly, though, Louise is from Yorkshire. Just thought we had to share that, as am I. And she practices daily yoga, meditation, and obviously breathing. And she believes this has significantly improved her focus, concentration, energy levels, quality of sleep, ability to exercise, appreciation for life, and stress resilience. Wow. So welcome, Louise. How are you?
Thank you very much for having me.
Good. I think we lost a bit of connection then. Louise, I like to ask a fun fact when I have guests join me. Is there a fun fact for you to share today?
So on my birthday this year, I spent an afternoon in an roller skating rink, and I managed for the first time ever to skate backwards. So I was super proud of myself.
Wow, check you. I can't even roller skate forwards. That's impressive. That is so good. Roller skating actually requires a lot of balance, and as a yoga teacher, it's one of my weakest points is balance. So yeah, strong ankles, and yeah, so well done. Okay, so let's start at the very beginning, as the song says, and I just want to pick up on something that I heard you say when I met you previously. Where you describe breathing as like the missing jigsaw piece for perimenopausal women. And can you explain more and why it's overlooked? Because it's the first time I've heard that.
So essentially, I see health and well-being as a jigsaw puzzle of many pieces, and different pieces are going to have different importance to different people. So I've got a blog on this on my website, but essentially there's different pieces, but one of those pieces is how we breathe. And I think it's just a concept we just don't think about really. So I think it's really important to know that how we breathe matters. And if you're not necessarily breathing as efficiently as you think you could be, you can change how you breathe.
Yeah, I think, I know from yoga, obviously the breath is so important, but it's just something we take for granted and we don't think that there's a right or wrong way to do it. And you actually describe it as an efficient way and a non-efficient way. So what would be the difference?
So essentially, I graduated from medical school in 1998, and I thought either you were breathing or you weren't breathing. But I now realise that just because breathing is automatic, it doesn't automatically mean it's efficient. So we can breathe efficiently, inefficiently, or anywhere in between. You can move between that. And actually, each of the hormonal transitions, our breathing is more likely to become slightly more inefficient. So it's just having that concept that how am I breathing over a 24-hour period, and is it efficient? And if it isn't, could I improve my efficiency of breathing?
Okay, so without going into too much right at the start, because we're going to jump into menopause in a minute, like what would be the effects of not breathing efficiently? Like long term or even short term, how would you feel?
So essentially, your body's primed, isn't it? The ultimate foundation of life is breath. The ultimate foundation of breath, because even the best free divers can only last a few minutes without breathing. I can probably last a couple of days without fluid. I can probably last a couple of weeks without eating at all. So breathing is the ultimate foundation. So your body will always prioritize breathing. So if you're not breathing efficiently, your body will make all sorts of changes in your body systems to enable you to continue to breathe. But because it has to make changes to how it's been biologically programmed to function, it can lead to symptoms, and sometimes symptoms that you wouldn't imagine. So there's so many different symptoms, but what I always say to someone, if you're not breathing efficiently, you're essentially making it harder for your body to function. And if you improve your efficiency, you can look back and see what symptoms have improved or resolved, and then you'll know what was related to it. But essentially, it can affect everything. So it can affect sleep. It can affect how much water you lose. It can affect your oxygen exchange. It affects your muscles, your ligaments. It can affect how your waste fluids move around your body. There's so many different ways it can affect.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must make you more tired because your body's working harder. It must make you more fatigued, mustn't it? Yeah. So let's jump into like hormones, this link with hormones. So how is it linked with our hormones, and what effect does it have?
So we know that hormones change how we breathe. We know that there's lots of this research to say that, and I see that practically, clinically, when I'm working as a GP at the surgery. There's not so much research as to why. So if we stick with menopause, so we know that as women go through the menopause, there's a steep rise in what we call sleep disordered breathing. So what I mean by that is the term sleep disordered breathing means that people are not breathing efficiently when they're asleep, and that can be anything from an increased resistance to the air coming in and out of that person, heavy snoring, or actually stopping breathing when you're asleep. So what we call obstructive sleep apnea. And obviously, if we think about it, our unconscious breathing pattern is our breathing pattern when asleep. So and what happens is, as women go through the menopause, they have a steep rise in sleep disordered breathing. So they're more likely to start snoring, more likely to stop breathing during sleep. But the trouble is that affects then your repair and recover mechanism, because when we're asleep, it should be nice and sort of quiet, regular breathing. Your body should not have to think about breathing. That should just happen in the background, and then it can do all the repair process on immune system and removing waste products, etc., and repairing damage from what's happened when you've been awake. So but what the body, obviously, if it's not breathing efficiently, it will prioritize breathing over repair and recovery. And that can have very significant long-term effects. So we know it happens. So we know that, so it's difficult to get exact figures, but one study said there's a three times increased risk of sleep disorder breathing as women go through the menopause. And there's different aspects to that. So one aspect is we sometimes put weight on, and we actually can put weight on our tongue, so we can get a fatter tongue, and that makes the air so our tongue can get bigger, but that means then that makes our airway, this tube that we're breathing through. So it's narrow. So obviously, if we lose weight, we can lose weight off our tongue.
That's incredible.
But we also, the hormones, it's fascinating, isn't it? The other aspect is we lose progesterone. Has an effect around the airway, and it tends to increase the tone of the muscles around the airway. So when we lose that, it becomes more floppy, and it's more likely to vibrate, which is snoring or collapse. Also, women tend to sort of be upper chest breathers. So again, that affects our breathing efficiency.
Is that the design of a female body? Why women breathe from the chest more? Is that just the design of the female body, or is it some other reason?
So I think there's a couple of reasons. One, I think society expects us to hold our stomach in. So if sort of hold the stomach flat, and that is terrible for breathing. So if anybody here, like me, I think I think I was 10 when another pupil in the playground told me to suck my stomach in to stop it looking so big. And I think probably at that moment I stopped using my diaphragm.
Wow.
And I think my slow decline on efficient breathing deteriorated from then. So I think what I'd say is don't hold your stomach in. The stomach is designed to move with breathing. So I think that's one aspect. I think the other aspect is our ribs are hung on differently to our spine. So men, the ribs are hung sort of horizontally onto the spine, whereas women, they're hung diagonally. So if I was like this, they're hung like that. Men are hung like this. Yeah. And then we think it's like that so that when we get pregnant, they can move out of the way to let the pregnant womb come out. But that means we're more likely to upper chest breathe. And if we upper chest breathe, we're less likely to use the diaphragm. And then the diaphragm, that main breathing muscle under the lungs, that should be what we use most of the time at rest. Sort of 80% of the work should be done by that. So there's lots of different aspects. I think we become a little bit more sensitive. This is my personal opinion. I think we become a little bit more sensitive to our waste product. So carbon dioxide is our waste product, but I think we become a little bit more sensitive to that, and that makes us experience air hunger more, and then that drives us to breathe a faster, heavier breathing pattern. And also women can get a menopausal rhinitis, so a blocked nose. And if your nose is blocked, you start to mouth breathe, and mouth breathing is not how we've been designed to breathe. So there's lots of different factors.
It's honestly fascinating, isn't it? You can't, something that is an autonomous process, you can't believe that can suddenly go awry, that the body can let it deteriorate and then have this knock-on effect on so many things. So you've talked about sleep, right? And lots of different reasons why our sleep might be impacted. That thing about the tongue is fascinating, and the progesterone, you know, narrowing the tube and so on. So is it, because I know from, you know, myself, and I know from women when we go on retreats, women are so reluctant to share a room with each other because they're so frightened of snoring and waking the other one up. So are we snoring more in menopause? Is that a natural thing, or is it just old age?
As we get older, there's an increase of sleep disordered breathing. So that definitely is true. But in one quite big study, they corrected for weight, and they corrected for age, because as we gain weight and as we age, we're more likely to not breathe well when we're asleep. We know that. But the scientists removed that. They did some clever calculations, so they could say that irrespective of weight, irrespective of age, there's something that happens as women go through the menopause. So we know that, but we have very little research on to why, and actually very little research on specifically for women what we can do to prevent that. And from a GP point of view, you know, as a GP, I wait until someone gets obstructive sleep apnea, then we treat it. But from a breathing practitioner point of view, I'd say, well, can we not intervene before we get to that point? And let's try and stop getting to that point. So I see it differently with two hats on, really.
A bit late then, isn't it? So, you know, sleep apnea then is when we stop breathing when we're asleep. And is it like, do you wake up coughing, you can't get air in? Like, what goes on with that? Just in case anybody doesn't know and it is happening to them.
So obviously, if you're sleeping next to somebody or sharing a room and they're telling you that you are stopping breathing during your sleep, that is really concerning. We shouldn't be stopping breathing when we're asleep. So that might be the first thing. Women generally, present differently than men, and the research says this, and this is my clinical experience. Women do not come in and tell me, I am snoring heavily, I am stopping breathing during sleep. Very rarely do they. They come in and say, I'm tired, I'm having nightmares, I'm waking up with headaches, I'm getting up to pass urine frequently at night, I'm oh gosh, I'm waking up with palpitations, I'm waking up with night sweats. There can be lots of reasons for all those symptoms. But what I'm saying is, one reason can be, it might be that somebody's not breathing efficiently, and you can wake up. Grinding can sometimes be another, teeth grinding, because if you think about it, if you're breathing through a tube, we have to really respect it. We're breathing through a tube, depending on your anatomy, that might be just the size of this. It may even be smaller in some people, and it's collapsible, so it can collapse here. Various things affect that. If you've got your mouth open, if you've got your mouth closed, how much weight you're carrying around here, how heavy you're breathing, and if that tube narrows enough or collapses enough for that person body to feel a threat to life, the body has to generate a fight-flight response to open the airway and take the person out of probably a deep sleep. It's more likely to happen in deep sleep. And then that person might wake up either feeling like they're choking, or the symptoms of a fight-flight reaction, because they've just had to do it. So it might be, palpitations, grinding of the teeth, feeling breathless, all sorts of things. So it can be really it can be really surprising that how easy it is to miss it. And I have a very low threshold now for sending patients for a sleep study. And I've had some really, I had a lady who I knew she had lots of risk factors for it. She was snoring, but she thought she was just snoring. Just snoring is I don't agree with that term, but I insisted I referred her for a sleep study, and I didn't know it could be as bad as this. She was stopping breathing or significantly compromising her breathing enough 94 times an hour.
Whoa.
So 94 times an hour. So that means I worked it out, about 20 minutes of every hour she wasn't breathing properly.
Wow.
And that's completely, and that is contributing to that person's mental health, blood pressure, diabetic control. She had other symptoms such as night sweats and sweating, etc. But unless I had asked her, do you snore? And I had insisted on, she didn't think she was stopping breathing during sleep. And I said, no, I want to refer you. She was like, I don't think you need to. No, I'm going to refer you 94 times an hour.
Wow. Just moving into, we said like mental health. What about brain fog as a symptom? So we've covered sleep. What about brain fog and like focus, concentration? If we're not breathing properly, is that attributed or can be attributed to it? Yeah.
So there's probably three aspects to that, I would say. So sleep is one. If you don't sleep well, for various reasons, but obviously one would be you're not breathing correctly. So sleep would be one. The second would be, there are some really interesting studies at the moment. People could Google this, put PubMed, but they're putting people into functional MRI scanners and getting them to nasal breathe, so breathe in and out of the nose, and getting them to mouth breathe in and out of the mouth. And the memory and learning centers light up more when we are nasal breathing.
I've heard that before.
So in the study that I looked at, you can literally see on these scanners, and wow, why do we not know this? So teachers should know this, parents should know it, we should know it. So we need to be nasal breathing at rest when we're moving and sleeping, because we want those memory and learning centers to be lit up. The other, and obviously remember, when we're asleep, we consolidate memory, learning, and do emotional processing. So we need to be nasal breathing when we're asleep to allow that to function better. The other aspects, the third aspect would be, there's something called the glymphatic system. So people may have heard of the lymphatic system, so like the lymph nodes, but the glymphatic system's got a G on the beginning of it, so glymphatic system. And it's only been discovered in the last 10 years or so. So most of the research suggests that when we're asleep, and particularly this is when adrenaline levels drop and we're in the deep stages of sleep, the brain relatively shrinks. So there's more space for the fluid around the brain and in between the cells. And then there's this like waste removal system. So it's almost like I've heard neuroscientists say, like, it's like a dishwasher system that turns on and basically removes the waste products, including dementia promoting proteins. But the issue is, if adrenaline goes up or we're taken out of the deep stage of sleep, that system doesn't appear at the moment, based on the evidence that we've got, to work as well. So if somebody keeps, essentially, the body's driving an adrenaline response to take them out of a stage of sleep to open their airway, that waste removal system is going to be interrupted.
Yeah, you're not got your hot watch.
Huge implications. Yeah, exactly. Huge implications for dementia, etc.
Scary. Just before we go on, guys, if anyone does have any questions, or you want to know a little bit more about something, just drop a comment, and either myself or Louise will get back to you. Just before, so we've talked about brain fog, we've talked about sleep. I missed one fundamental question. I had a note and I missed it. Was I know as a yoga teacher that we, should breathe through the nose and not through the mouth. Can you explain that really simply, why that is? I'd love to hear from your perspective as well.
So my perspective is this: I was at medical school and I got told all the functions of the nose. But I don't remember being told encourage your patients to breathe through their nose. I don't remember that bit. I don't think I was told that. And ultimately, you can breathe through your mouth, but it's a backup mechanism. That is not how we've been designed to breathe. The nose is connected to the brain via the olfactory nerve to send signals, to give feedback from where we are. We lose, and this I like perimenopausal and menopausal women to know this, we lose 42% more water through the mouth than we do if we're nasal breathing. So, certainly I feel drier and crispier since the menopause. So I don't want to be losing any excess water, and losing 42% water is a lot. So we lose more water. It's a lot, isn't it? But also I think the fundamental fact is, the nose is designed to warm, to moisten, to filter, and actually to pressurize the air. If we're mouth breathing, like now, I'm doing a lot of mouth breathing when I'm talking, I can feel it. You bring in cold, dry air into your lungs, and that triggers cough and wheeze. You have no filtering mechanism if you're breathing through your mouth. Pollen, virus, bacteria, pollution, straight into the lungs. The nose won't filter out everything. It won't filter out the very small particles, but it's much better than having no filter. You're less likely to use your diaphragm. You're more likely to upper chest breathe. If you mouth breathe, you're telling your body that there is more threat in the environment. Your body's expecting you to nasal breathe to feel safe. And when you mouth breathe, if you think about it, if someone was attacking me, I would breathe like that. So it's subtle, but you have more of a fight-flight response if you're mouth breathing compared to if you're nasal breathing. And you're slower. You're breathing slower. It's gentler. It's more efficient. You connect with your whole body's connected to your nose. Your tongue is connected to your toe. All that mechanism is connected to your pelvic floor, your diaphragm. You're just not using your body in the correct way.
I bet everybody listening to this now are all taping the mouths and breathing through the noses, using the diaphragm. So in yoga, and especially in menopause yoga, we talk about the power of the exhale, for firing up the parasympathetic part of the nervous system to bring us out of that fight-flight response and to bring calm. And obviously with anxiety being one of the most common symptoms. So how, from your standpoint, how does that help our breathing when we lengthen the exhale? Is that something we should be doing all the time? Should we be mindful of it?
Definitely. So I think ideally, say at rest, ideally you want to be breathing in and out of the nose. And at rest, to be honest, the breathing should be silent in and out of the nose. We don't actually need that much air when we're at rest. So generally at rest, we'd be expecting breathing in and out of the nose. It's silent. And we breathe in and we breathe out. So there's a longer exhale, as you say, and actually there might even be, if you're very inefficient, there might be a slight pause before you breathe in again. And that's what drives a parasympathetic, safe response. The body feels safe. The issue is this, is that, and you are completely right, the inhale is generally more fight-flight driven, and the exhale is generally thought to be more parasympathetically relaxation response driven. So if you extend the exhale, you're promoting that parasympathetic response. But the issue is this, is that carbon dioxide, our waste product, is our driver to breathe. So when people start to slow down their breathing and they're slowing down the exhale, the thing that makes them want to take the next breath in is their carbon dioxide tolerance. So if I try and explain this simply, if we were all stood at the bottom of a hill and I said to everybody, right, march up this hill and you must keep your mouth closed. I don't want you to open your mouth. You're breathing in and out of your nose. Keep your mouth closed, and we'll just obviously be breathing faster and harder, but through your nose. At some point, we would feel suffocated, and we'd have to stop or mouth breathe. At that point, you generally won't have run out of oxygen. You've generated more carbon dioxide. You've got a nose that's smaller than your mouth, so you're blowing it out slower. So your carbon dioxide will have gone up a little bit. You'll hit your tolerance to it. We've got receptors in the breathing center at the back of the brain. You hit your tolerance, you feel suffocated. That's a normal response. But we all have a personal tolerance to that. So in the past, I wouldn't have got very far up the hill. I've now trained my carbon dioxide tolerance, and I can do all my running, including around home first with the hills, with nasal breathing. And it's because I've improved. It's because I've improved my carbon dioxide tolerance. So going back to your exhale, the issue is this. So say I breathe in and I breathe out. If I've got poor carbon dioxide tolerance, I want to breathe in quickly because I've hit my carbon dioxide tolerance, and it's driving me to breathe in again. Whereas now I breathe in, I breathe out, and my body's like, no, I'm not that bothered about taking a breath in just yet. Oh, yeah, I've hit my tolerance now. Right, I'll breathe in. So as you improve your carbon dioxide tolerance, you breathe slower, you breathe gentler, and it tends to prolong the exhale. In my opinion,
which makes you nice and calm. Very good.
It makes you feel very calm.
Yeah, it would. So in terms of fatigue, I think we kind of touched on this, because if we're not breathing efficiently, you know, the body's working harder in other ways to compensate. So we're going to feel more tired. Is there anything else to add to that one, to fatigue?
Fatigue. So yes. So a couple of things. Obviously, if you don't sleep well, if you don't breathe well when you're asleep, you won't sleep well, so you're tired. You're often, when people aren't breathing efficiently, they often overbreathe, in my experience. So they're asking their body to do more to maintain breathing, which involves more energy. And the other thing is we can hit our, I don't know if it's aerobic, our anaerobic threshold sooner. So say we're exercising and we're finding it easy, but then we're exercising quite hard, and we know when we've got to this point, you know, you get lactic acid and it hurts, you get the pains from you're exercising quite hard. You've flipped into anaerobic metabolism at that point, and your waste products now become lactic acid and oxidative stress and free radicals, and you can't carry on exercising that much more because you fatigue really quickly with that. But when you improve your breathing efficiency, it shifts that, so you can do a lot more exercise before you hit that point.
Right.
So because when you're using oxygen to burn when you're exercising, the only waste products you've got are water and carbon dioxide. So the more tolerant you are to carbon dioxide, the more you can carry on doing that. Yeah. But then when you hit that threshold and you start to use energy from stores that is not oxygen, you essentially start to create products that hurt, and your body has to metabolize to get rid of. So we don't want that, particularly around the menopause. We've already got enough free radicals and inflammation to deal with. So so that's another good reason. So I use my nose as my barometer of how much exercise I can do. I'm not interested in mouth breathing with exercise because I don't want to create extra inflammation I don't need, basically.
Yeah. What about digestion? I thought this was a good one to throw in. Can non-efficient breathing affect digestion? I'm guessing so. Everything's linked, isn't it? There's nothing in isolation in the body.
So if you think about it, we call it rest and digest. So the parasympathetic nervous system is rest and digest, isn't it? Or feed and breed. So our gut is happier when we're more parasympathetically relaxation response driven, because it feels safe and it can prioritize it as a long-term survival mechanism. So if we're more fight flight driven, the gut gets turned off, essentially. Digestion won't be as useful. And if I'm breathing like this, whether I'm at rest, sleeping, or excessively breathing during exercise, I'm not going to be as parasympathetically driven as if I'm like this.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
Because my body, it just makes sense, doesn't it? My body feels safe. So it's going to say, oh, she's safe. She's breathing in and out of the nose. She's breathing slow, gentle, using the diaphragm. We're safe. I can now put energy into surviving long term rather than prioritizing short term survival.
Like, let's get on with what we're supposed to do, isn't it? So how do we test our own breathing efficiency? So let's say maybe some people live on their own and they're not aware that they snore, and, you know, they're not aware of some of these things. Yeah. So how do we test our own breathing efficiency? What would we do?
So we haven't got a gold standard simple test that everybody agrees on in the world, and that, I think, is because there's different ways of breathing inefficiently, and breathing is really complicated. So this is my take on it. So the first one is, what's your breathing like? The first one is, what's your breathing like when you're asleep? Now, obviously, if you live on your own, perhaps you don't know that, but you might have a sleeping partner, or you might be sharing a room with someone if you go away. If you're sleeping with your mouth open, you're snoring, you've got noisy breathing, you're stopping breathing during sleep, all of that suggests that you've got some inefficient breathing going on. If you're not sure, there are various snoring apps that you can download. Some of them are for free, and you can record yourself and you can see. So that's the first one. The second one, observe your breathing. So over the next few days, a week, just check in with your breathing, particularly when you are distracted. So on the computer, perhaps when you're driving, you're watching the TV, you're going up and down the stairs, you're walking from the car, from the house to the car. Just are you using your mouth? And if you're using your mouth, or there's something called email apnea. So someone's described email apnea, or when you're using an electronic device and you sort of hold your breath. That can mean sometimes inefficient breathing. So so just observe how much you're using the mouth, and the more you're using the mouth to breathe, essentially, there's nothing. The only role the mouth has in breathing is making it inefficient. So just observe. Normally people are surprised. Lots of people say, I'm a nasal breather, and then I say, okay, just observe your breathing for a week. Oh, I mouth breathe loads more than I thought. And then the other thing is, there's a paper by Keisel and colleagues, and they looked at various different mechanisms. It's not a way of diagnosing breathing pattern disorder, but it's a way of highlighting you're not breathing so efficiently. So I think it's quite useful. It's a little bit more in depth. So, but if I can go through it now if you want me to, that's not a problem, but I do describe it. There's a video on my YouTube channel where how to assess your breathing efficiency, and there's 4 questions, and you do a comfortable breath hold time, and I explain it on there because it's a little bit involved, but and that's a useful tool as well.
Well, I will include the link below, so people can access that. So you have a functional breathing program Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I stopped my perimenopausal snoring by correcting how I breathed. And I didn't think I had a problem with my breathing. I was running 3 times a week and still snoring. So essentially now that made me recognize how important it is. So obviously I did my breathing practitioner training. And now over the last few years, I've developed an individual and a group program. So depending on how people want to be supported. And I look at all 3 dimensions of breathing and re-establishing a 24-hour nasal breathing pattern whilst resting, moving and sleeping. So I cover all the aspects that they need to have. So essentially, I teach people in between sessions. So I have sessions with them, either group. On the group program, there's some that are pre-recorded, some live sessions, individual, obviously the one-to-one, and then individuals do work in between because they're trying to retrain their unconscious breathing pattern in between. So they're trying to make new muscle memory, new nerve connections, that they're breathing correctly, and particularly we're improving carbon dioxide tolerance. We do some work on diaphragmatic strengthening and flexibility and breathing slower. But to be honest, if you improve your carbon dioxide tolerance, you generally use the diaphragm more and you generally breathe slower, as long as it's in combination with nasal breathing. So,
and lastly, in terms of yoga, because I know you practice yoga, and we have lots of different breathing techniques. Is there any one particular one that you would recommend to help with?
So this is with it. So this is what I mean. I'm fascinated by yoga, how it was developed many years ago. I think it's just so intuitive that they just listened to their body and developed. I just think it's amazing. I think we've lost a little bit of the art of listening to our body and responding. So my response to that question will be, I think people, and the trouble is you need a bit of knowledge to be able to understand this, but essentially if you deliberately change your breathing pattern, so if we change it now, we have the potential to change our biochemistry, our physiology, and actually our anatomy as well. So we have to respect that when we are deliberately changing our breathing pattern, it's almost like we're hijacking your system or the person who you're teaching to do it. And I think people need to know certain things before they do that. So I think there's 3 questions. So for me, the first question is that person breathing efficiently, and does the breathing exercise improve breathing efficiency? So that's the first question. What's the aim of the practice, and does the science fit the aim? And then the third one, is it right for that person at that moment in time? Right. So if I break that down, the first question, are you breathing efficiently? So for me, if you're not breathing efficiently, it would make no sense to me to practice a breathing exercise that's not going to improve your breathing efficiency. That just doesn't make sense to me. The second one, what's the science, and what's the aim of the practice, and does the science fit the aim? Because unfortunately, I am hearing on social media certain breathing exercises being promoted as it will achieve this, but I don't understand the science behind that. My science knowledge doesn't fit with what they're saying will happen. So I think there has to be actually a questioning about that. And then the third one, is it right for this person at this moment in time? So, I encourage people on my courses, I want you to think about your body, your autonomic nervous system. Are you fight flight driven at this moment in time, or are you relaxation response driven at the moment? What do you want to do on the dials? Do you want to turn up the fight flight? Do you want to turn it down? Do you want to turn up the relaxation response? Do you want to turn it down? So, and then you listen to your body. And where do I want to encourage my body to be? And then I will choose an exercise depending on that. So I can never answer that question, because it will vary moment to moment. It varies on the person.
It's not as simple, is it? And like in my membership on my app, I have lots of different yogic breathing techniques. And I try to categorize them by symptoms so that women understand if they're feeling stressed, this one will help slow them down, relax everything. But yeah, it's very subjective, isn't it, to how you are at that point in time and what your goal is, I guess. Louise, it's been fascinating. Thank you so much. If anyone has any questions, just drop us a comment and check out links to Louise's website and her functional breathing program. And honestly, we could talk longer and longer. There's so much to cover. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.